We are about to continue. Anybody who's interested, please sit down. If not, go outside and don't bother us in here. Shh. Being quite loud, Nemanja. They're being quite loud. You can be loud as well, alright. Okay. So the next talk is by this strapping young man. For a while, he was data at Unity being honestly one of our coolest ventures that we have. It's a knowledge platform for students, built by students actually back then, and they've experienced massive user growth. Nemanja here was partially responsible to building the data platform during that hyper-growth period. So please, Nemanja, data lead at Unity, tell us how you did it. Give it up for Nemanja, please.
Thank you. So, yes, hi everybody. I'm Nemanja. I'm a head of data at Unity, and Unity is this cool garage band which we run here, and very young, very well, not so small anymore company, but we are very young, only about a year and a half in the making, and as you can see, we have been experiencing massive growth, and what my presentation is all about is to kind of tell you the trials and tribulations of our journey on that way. So to start, I would say logical question will be, who are we? And we are this, I would say, Europe's fastest growing ed tech startup. We created this platform for students, by students, as was already said, about 2 years ago, when our founders were still prepping for their A-levels. So they were still high schoolers and struggling on their own to find appropriate materials to work. And they came up with this idea of building a platform where students can generate content, learning content, and share it with other students. And this became Unity. So we are a modern and fun peer-to-peer content sharing platform where students, we basically sit at the intersection of education and social media or social networks. So we are creating this whole new category of influencers, which already by now have the followings in tens of thousands. So this is actual screenshot. So we have a creator which has nearly 50,000 followers on the platform, and we are building this huge community where the students can find support and help others as well study and learn. So how are we doing so far is the next logical question, and we are doing, without bragging, really amazing. So we started around September 2020, so a little over a year and a half ago, and we already have more than 2.5 million users. We hit 1 million monthly active users in last month, which is like a massive milestone which we wanted to reach. We are incredibly loved by our community and by our users. We have been #1 education app in every market that we started so far, and even when we finished that initial launch period, we still stick around in the top 5 permanently. We have more than 50% monthly retention, and there's this PMF score which we have been using, product market fit score, which we have been using to sort of evaluate how well do we fit to our users' needs, and it's been 65%, and generally it's been considered that everything about 30-35% is really good. So we have been doing amazingly well. As I said, we have hit 2.5 million users already. But to give a little bit more context, in the past 5 months of this year, we have added more than 1 million new users. So this has been a very sort of a hockey stick growth type of deal. And everything that comes with that is sort of a challenge for the platform as well. So we've hit a lot of really weird situations where all of a sudden somebody shares on their TikTok, some influential TikToker shares something, and then there's 20,000 users joining within like 6 hours, and our tracking and our ad system and everything goes down just because of the pure load. So we doubled in last 6 months. So basically, since November, we went more than double in number of users, and the plan is for the next 6 months, so by the end of this year, to do it again. Also, these users stick around, which is probably the most fascinating thing that we did so far. We are catering to K-12 education students, so teenagers essentially. And I would be confident in saying that besides us, I think only Snapchat and TikTok has the same level of retention as we do. So we have seen users who installed in 2020, cohorts of 2020 installs returning with like 40–45% retention rate on a yearly level. In our key cohorts, which was the higher grades, we have more than 65% retention rate. And we have hit 1 million monthly active users in such a short span time that during this school year, our monthly active user numbers went up by 7-fold, so 7 times more than at the beginning of the school year. We also launched beyond just the German-speaking regions. So we were present pretty much since the start in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, at least German-speaking Swiss part. But this year we started France in February. We immediately went to the #1 spot in overall App Store. We acquired more than 350,000 users since, so that's like 3 months. We started Poland in late April with a very ambitious goal of reaching 60,000 users by the end of the quarter. We got 60,000 users within first 5 days. So right now we are close to 200K, and we started preparations for the next school year where we want to launch Italy and UK in September. So what's the goal behind all of this? We are planning to build the most engaging, the engaging product to cater to all of the students, basically globally, but that's like a long-term plan. Short-term plan is to expand to some 10 additional, to have more than 10 markets in Europe covered, reach more than 10 million registered users, and get to like 6 million monthly active users by the end of next year. We also plan to introduce new content formats. Right now, the content is pretty much just PDFs, which you can create and share. We want to we started experimenting with videos. We started experimenting with audio content. We started experimenting with interactive content in the terms of like flashcards or pop quizzes and so on. And obviously, we want to start monetizing everything that we do. So scalable monetization is one of our key goals right now. Growing of our B2C side of monetization, at least, because we already have some B2B revenue. But we need to maintain the level of engagement that we currently have. So all of this has to happen within the next year, or next couple of years, with the very strict conditions on how we engage users and still managing to grow at essentially the same breakneck speed that we have been doing so far. And starting to monetize the user base that we have, massive user base. So this kind of brings a lot of challenges to the data team and a lot of interesting things that I've heard already today. Kind of same topics I've been repeating and have been topics of our concern as well. So basically we need to start by supporting growth. And this is, I would say, purely engineering task. We need to continue building the robust and scalable data platform, where the data platform can obviously sustain the amount of users that we have at any given point, but also a platform that will enable the development of the product further. So creating personalization, creating innovative ways of approaching and communicating with the users. All of those things are needed in this sense. We need to facilitate further product development. So what this means, at the speed of growth that we are experiencing right now, it is no longer feasible to just do the manual analytics. So we are having quite diverse user base. There are different countries, which basically for starters have different languages, but also different habits, very different seasonality around the behavior, very different habits around the behavior, very different school systems that we need to sort of adapt to. All of this at the scale that we are operating right now, and especially at the scale that we are aiming for, will no longer be possible to be done just manually. But we need to introduce machine learning for both user clustering and understanding of the user base and understanding of the user usage patterns. And we need to introduce machine learning to feed back all of that knowledge into personalizing the experiences that users have. And finally, which I think is the most important thing that we need to tackle, is building of the data-driven company culture. So it is always, every company will say that they are data-driven, but when you look what they're actually doing, there's a team of like 5 to 10 people sitting that are the only ones who are looking at the data and sort of giving the tips to the others of what's happening and what they should be doing. At NoUnity, first of all, the data team is so small, so we cannot afford to do this. And second of all, that is ultimately the bad approach. So we're looking for this data democratization. So everybody in the company should be comfortable in consuming the data, in running their own hypothesis, proving or disproving them, in iterating over their own ideas on their own. So the development of the data products and the data platform itself should be primarily skewed towards facilitating that. And I will go a little bit quicker because I think I'm going too slow. So where the data started. This has probably been the most controversial thing that we ever did. And this is this ClickHouse, choosing ClickHouse as our data warehouse provider. So first of all, for the first 8 months, we didn't even have front-end tracking. So we only had the back-end data, and we did what we could with the back-end data. But then we kind of had to start tracking in some way. And the decision to take ClickHouse has been very practical, I would say. It was the cheapest solution out there. And ClickHouse is in itself, it's a very cool tool. It's pretty optimized for speed. It works really well when it's set up correctly. But the challenge is it's a very new tool. There's no community. There's no help that you can find elsewhere out there. And the final thing, which is ultimately killed the ClickHouse in our usage, is no other tool has support for ClickHouse. It is just that young and that small that we couldn't use DBT, we couldn't use Airflow. I mean, we could use Airflow, but at a very high expense of development. So we kind of said that this eventually has to go. Basically, in May 2021, when we started front-end tracking, we had already about 750,000 users. We did another relatively controversial decision, which is to do the tracking in-house. We didn't go for any tool. Again, the pricing was the decision that the pricing was the primary reason why we decided to go with that. We created this super rudimentary, very simple microservice, which was just checking, catching the events and writing them directly into the database. And this actually worked for the time. So in November 2021, I joined, which was the first dedicated data employee. And the first things which was up to me to do was to bring improvements to everything. The improvements started with the expansion of the tracking. So the data warehouse itself could work still at that time, but the tracking couldn't. And my favorite thing about our initial tracking was these two. We had a field called value and field called value ID. Value was the catch-all for string values, and value ID was the catch-all for integer values. And anything which didn't fit into like 15 or 20 other parameters, we would just dump there and sort of hope that 6 months down the line, we would know what we wrote in that event there. So starting with that, we needed to expand everything. We needed to start capturing the context of different tracking events. We needed to, first of all, we weren't even tracking the sessions at that time. So first was defining the sessions. Second was introducing these context snippets so that every information about the user would be stored in a single tracking snippet, a family of parameters. Same applies for content, same applies for transaction, and so on. Then we needed to expand the coverage to the full product because we weren't doing tracking of all the things that we were doing. So website wasn't tracked super precisely, app had blind spots, and so on. We also needed to sort of prep ourselves for the growth of both the team and the company in establishing naming conventions, and we had to do so much QA because everything was, as I said, GarageBand style. We were doing things and the things were moving quickly. Second thing was migrating our data warehouse. So obviously, we couldn't sustain the growth that we wanted with a tool which wasn't really supported by any other tool. So we made the decision to do the switch. And luckily for us, it was just one single table which we had, which was the event table. We were basically operating as a data lake, just in a structural data warehouse. We went for Google BigQuery. No particular reasons. I mean, you guys a little bit helped, the Project A data team, but yeah. We started introducing also the data tools. So finally, DBT was there, and we could start creating new tables, enriching the data that we have, introducing new context, new abstractions, and so on, and overall developing the data warehouse further. Data-driven company culture was the next thing, and as the team grew, so when I joined, there was maybe 20 of us. Now there's more than 65 of us, I think. And one of the things which I'm a very big fan of is Metabase. Metabase in itself as a data visualization tool and reporting tool is pretty subpar. Like, it doesn't do anything amazing. However, it is the most democratic of all the tools, if I can say. It's a browser-based tool. Anybody can access, and part of the onboarding in Unity is getting access to Metabase and getting the basic training in how to use it, so that you can use their drag-and-drop solution to actually iterate over your own ideas and your own hypothesis without depending on the data team or somebody else to get it. And actually, we got to the point where the entire product team is actually writing their own queries. The growth team is writing their own queries. Developers obviously write their own queries. So I would say more than half of the company actually writes SQL. The rest of the company uses this drag and drop tool. Another thing which I'm really proud of is the A/B testing tool. We basically created a mini application which we host also, like a web-based application, which is connected to our data source, our database. And again, drag and drop. You say which experiment you want to evaluate, which are the experiment names. You take into account which is the starting event, ending event, or if you want to calculate the retention use set, which is the starting week, ending week, and so on. And basically, we enable other people to run A/B tests and get the proper statistical analysis run behind it, just through the just by logging into some small tool which we developed in-house. And this accelerated us immensely because previously the bottleneck was actually me. I could only do so much things, and some things were dragging because of the bottlenecks. That was the data team. We no longer have that bottleneck. Everybody can run an A/B test, and everybody can draw valid conclusions with the proper statistical significance on those A/B tests. Improving data ingestion, this is already something which is going into the future. So obviously, the rudimentary system that we set up has its own limits, and we already saw those limits a bunch of times. But going forward with ambitions of acquiring users in the United States and sort of going global, we need to upgrade this. We need to build in fail-safes. We need to implement the data quality checks within the same process. And we need to make it robust to the point where we can operate with 10 to 20 million users active on any given day. So, yeah. And the final thing is probably the most exciting thing that awaits us. We hired our first learning specialist. We are slowly moving towards the world in which we can actually make automated pipelines to learn from the user behavior, analyze the data, make the decision, and act upon the decision in a completely automated fashion, be it for the product purposes of personalizing or creating a better user experience, or for the marketing, how do we run the communications, how do we re-engage users, how do we engage the new ones, or for anything else for that matter. So dealing with the massive user base is the primary reason for this, but also exploring the completely new avenues of data products and what can we do with the data we have. I think I kind of hitting the right on the time, so thank you all for listening to me, and yeah. I guess if nobody objects, we can do questions. NLP, yes, it's an interesting thing. So one of the things which we might use NLP is the search, primarily than the messages, just sort of contextualizing what the users search. In a sense, like when you search for David Bowie on Google, it also gives you the results, David Bowie's albums. So we need to do something similar. If you search for French Revolution, we should give you Robespierre or Bastille as well. So yes, that is definitely part of our roadmap, and we are looking into it. But right now, do we have more time?
Sorry.
No, but we can talk afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you so much.